All right, 97.7 Outlaw Radio FM listeners, you already know what time it is, and right here, right now, we actually have a legendary guest straight out of Brooklyn, New York. We got the one and only OC from Diggin in the Crates crew, and of course, Crooklyn Dodgers 95. How are you doing this evening, OC?
I'm good, man. How's everything with you?
Doing best as I can possibly be down here in Canada, man. You know, just happy to get back to normal life and just get back to just normaltivity, man.
Yeah, as normal as we can get, right?
I definitely agree with that. There's still masks in certain places, but other than that, it seems the concerts and the festivals are starting to pile on, man. So it's definitely going to be an eventful summer for humanity.
Indeed, it's definitely getting back. Not so much normal, but humanity is just trying to get back to normal as best as they can.
But OC, I know you're a busy guy, man, so I'm going to dive right into this interview. But I want to take you back to the amazing year of 1991, where you actually made your recording debut on Organized Confusion's Fudge Pudge. I was wondering if you can actually tell us a bit more about that recording debut, and of course, how did you originally get connected with Organized?
Um, well, Farrell was my neighbor. Farrell lived across the street from me in Jamaica, Queens. We lived across the street from each other. Fast forward, him and Prince Poe went to high school together. They were childhood friends, and that's where my linkage comes up with the both of them. But I was actually neighbors with Farrell, and they took me under their wing, and everything else is history.
And I gotta say as well, man, that was definitely a phenomenal collaboration, man. I always like going back and listening to some of my favorite MCs like yourself and just hear the earlier days, man. You guys had such phenomenal chemistry together on that particular song.
Yeah, nah, that was actually something that just made it on their debut album because they had other guys that they was trying to bring up behind them, which was me, one of them being me. And some guys produced and did the MC thing, and it just happened that the night that they was closing out their album, they put me on the spot, and I never forget that. Lost Professor was there. Um, our whole crew was there. It was in Power Play Studios, and they put me on the spot to write my verse right there, and that's what happened.
And also, as well, roughly a year later, you actually made an appearance on the remix of MC Search's Back to the Grill, which also featured a very young Nas at the time. I was wondering, from what you actually can recall, what was it like actually working on that particular project, and of course, just being in the studio with a very young Nas?
Um, I actually wasn't in the studio when I did my the remix. Um, with Nas, I was in the studio with Search, and I believe Nas joint was, it was him, Chubb Rock, and Search, so that was the original song. And we were both Search's artists. We were signed to the Searchlight, production company, and that's how that came about.
And I gotta say as well, MC Search was one of the very first Caucasian hip hop artists as well. Like a lot of people think like Vanilla Ice or Eminem, but people sometimes forget that MC Search was really one of the first ones.
Yeah, nah, Search is an authentic hip hop dude from Far Rockaway, Queens. Like, who used to hang in the Latin quarters with all the blacks and the Latinos, and used to get jumped and chased, and he had to fight for his spot. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, he was definitely. I guess they didn't look at him as one of the white guys coming up. Not more or less like Beastie Boys. They didn't look at him like that. Search actually grew up in the hood of Far Rockaway. So and Prime Minister P. Nice made third base, and of course their DJ was Richie Rich. You know what I'm saying? And he's a multi-platinum artist. You know what I'm saying?
And also, as well, as I mentioned in the intro to this interview, you were also a member of Crooklyn Dodgers 95. I was wondering if you can actually tell our listeners the story behind that group, and of course, how did you actually become a member of the 95 incarnation?
I mean, it's actually not a group. It's like you said, an incarnation. But um, Search, Premier, Cream, and the people up at Premier and Spike Lee basically was trying to figure out a trio who can probably come close to or meet the expectations of the original Crooklyn Dodgers, which was Master Ace, Buckshot, and Special Ed. And Preem gave him some ideas, and around that time, me and Rue was actually doing our thing. We was coming up, so it made sense, and I think Spike asked for Chubb, and that's all she wrote after that.
And I remember as well that you guys actually released your guys' first and only record, which was Return of the Crooklyn Dodgers, that was produced by DJ Premier. I was wondering, why did you guys only release that one project? And of course, what was it like just putting that together alongside DJ Premier?
Well, like I said, it wasn't a group, It was just something that to keep the Crooklyn Dodger spirit alive, and that's all it was. Me, Chubb, and J. Rue and Premier were in the group, but the combination, was something that Preem saw in his head, and as everybody know, DJ Premier, he's a genius in his own right, so. He seen it in his mind. He was presented with the idea, and he told him what his idea should be. And that was me, and J-Ro, and of course Chubb.
And I gotta say, with that particular record, you guys definitely did exactly what you guys were supposed to do by keeping the spirit alive, man, because that song is still huge today. If I'm not mistaken, it also got placed on a soundtrack as well.
As far as when? Today?
I mean, like back in the day. I think it was.
Nah. It was for Oh damn! I forgot the name of the movie, but it was the first video for the movie, and Spike shot the video, and that was all she wrote. I mean, it's a big record, like you said. Fortunately, to this day, and it still rocks out.
And also, as well, in the same year of 95, you actually were featured on Notorious B.I.G.'s single titled Stop the Brakes that was ultimately released on his project titled Unreleased and Unleashed. I was wondering if you can actually tell us a bit more about that recording session, and of course, what was it like just being able to work alongside fellow Brooklyn, New York legend like Biggie Smalls?
I don't know exactly what you're talking about. That might be a bootleg or something, because I never worked with Big in the studio. Yeah.
I end up noticing that. I end up noticing that on Discog. So it might be a bootleg as well, man. Because I do know a lot of people mash things together.
Yeah, because I see quite a few mashups that I ain't never heard of in my life, but they sound good together. But today's game, you can do anything.
I definitely agree. Some of them, it sounds like they were sounds like you guys some of those mashups. It sounds like you guys were actually right in the studio doing it together, man. So, some of these individuals are very good at what they do with these mashups.
Exactly, and that's funny you should say that, because, like I said, I've seen them over the years. I didn't hear the one with Big and me, but I think it's probably a few more people on that record too. But those are mashups that guys are doing. Just out of pure entertainment for themselves.
And also, as well, you were actually a member of the iconic hip-hop group titled Diggin in the Crates, also known as D.I.T.C. I was wondering, what is the story behind that iconic hip-hop group? And of course, what made all you guys decide to come together? Because your roster on that crew is absolutely incredible.
I met Lord Finesse I went on the Source tour with Pharaoh and Prince Pole, Organized Confusion, the very first Source tour. Lord Finesse happened to be on that tour. MC Search, Bismarck, Roxanne Shante. You guys know him as Doggy Diamonds. You know, he got the podcast, Forbes DVD, and a couple of other things. But you know, these is where I met, you know, Finesse and Search and a then unknown Buck Wild. Finesse had Buck Wild on the tour as well. Fast forward, you know, to make a long story short, you know, after the tour, we stayed friends, and me and Buck just had a natural chemistry, even though we never even knew each other that long. And I started going up to the Bronx and doing demos, a couple of demos in Buck's house, and from there, you know, we started making music, and that's where my introduction to the D.I.T.C, so to speak, came about.
And also as well, in D.I.T.C, man, one of the past members is actually the late, great Big L. And the one thing I have to ask, because unfortunately with today's generation, the only thing they actually have to know about Big L is kind of like, you know, his previous releases and, of course, stories that individuals like you guys tell. So if you don't mind me asking, what was Big L like, kind of like away from the microphone and away from the media? Like, can you actually tell us a bit more about who Big L was?
Big L was, well, first of all, he was the youngest out of everybody. I was next to the youngest. He was younger than us. L wasn't far removed from high school before he, you know, got his deal. He was still in high school on the first album, Lifestyles of Poor and Dangerous. So he was still a kid, man. Like, he didn't get to grow up yet. You know, he died young, and he, you know, he put a lot of things in motion as far as like all the battles that was going on today in the leagues and things like that. His spirit has a lot to do with that because he was doing it himself, you know. And as far as personally, he was a young guy, so he was funny, you know. He was cool, he was funny. He ain't smoked weed or nothing like that. He drank a little bit, but his main thing was being a superstar. That's what he had in his, you know, in his vision. He had a vision of being a superstar. He knew exactly what he was going to be.
And I gotta say as well, rest in peace to the late great Big L, man. In my honest opinion, he didn't even get the opportunity to really grow as an artist either, because I do know he released that one studio album. Then of course he had the posthumous studio album releases, but he was such a phenomenal MC, and I really wish us listeners and fans would have had the opportunity to see him flourish, man, because was such a phenomenal MC and great at what he did.
Right. Well, he released 2 albums. His debut album was Lifestyles of the Poor and Dangerous. He was still in high school, I believe, when the album came out. And, you know, of course, like you said, he didn't get to see his second album come out, but The Big Picture. And he was in a whole different bag with that album. Like, he grew so quick. That's how you knew he was special with what he did, because he was just out of high school maybe a couple of years prior to that. So to hear him go from Lifestyles to Ebonics was, you know, you already know, like, when you mention Nas, you mention Hov, you mention Big, you had to mention this dude, had he, you know, going on to have a career.
And also as well, in the year 97, you actually inked a deal with Payday Records where you ultimately released your second favorite album titled Jules. I was wondering, how did that record deal originally come to be for you? And of course, what was it like just working for that particular label during that time?
I was touring a lot on the first album. And, you know, as much work as I put in on Word Life, it just seemed like the album was stagnated, so I was ready to move on. So, you know, I looked into getting a release from Wild Pitch, and, you know, of course, they said I didn't recoup at the moment, so they was looking for somebody to buy me out. You know, people were interested. I didn't want to do a big deal, because the more money you take, the more money you have to recoup. And Payday was one of the people at the table, and they made the most sense. And that's why I went with Payday, you know. You know, that's how that situation went.
And I gotta say as well, Jules was such a phenomenal project, man. The one song I really always enjoyed was It's Only Right. And I gotta say, Mr. Walt of the Beat Miners did such phenomenal production work on that particular song.
Yeah, nah, that was both, you know. People don't realize that's the team. Beat Miners is the brothers, Mr. Walt and Evil D, and, you know, what can I say about them? That's my brothers, you know what I'm saying? They got a hell of a history. We Duck Down and Into the Stage is probably one of my favorite, if not one of my favorite group albums of all time. You know, with the production that they did on there, I definitely would have picked most of that stuff they put on the Into the Stage album with Buckshot getting busy. So, you know, it was just a blessing.
And while we're on the topic of projects and whatnot, man, my personal favorite album by you was actually released April 24th of 2021, titled Bon Appetit. I was always wondering, man, what is the story and inspiration behind this legendary record, man? Because I remember being a young boy standing outside Music World waiting for this CD to actually finally be released and put in my hands.
Mm-hmm. Well, that was the least favorite album people like from me, but for me, that's personally one of my favorite albums. You know, next to Same Moon and Same Sun. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's probably when my transition started changing. You know, it was a transitional period for me. So I was 2 albums in. My 3rd album is making me a sophomore. And, you know, people would doubt you. So when I did the album, a lot of people, it took maybe till today for people to understand what I was doing. But, you know, to sum it up in a nutshell, I tell people all the time, man, albums are like chapters in people's lives. You know what I'm saying? And it's like books. You know what I'm saying? You give people what you are, whether they're going to like it or not. And I'm not going to like everything from my favorite artist, so I got that, I understood that, and I know the consequences and repercussions of putting out music, because, you know, people can tend to not like what you do, you know what I'm saying, but I can't worry about that, you know, at this day and time, I don't worry about that anymore. I do what I feel, and I felt like that album was probably, up to that point, my best record.
And I gotta say, I definitely agree with that. The one song I really enjoyed was the one you did with Jay-Z, Bonafide, man. That I Want You by the I think it was the Johnson Brothers, if I'm not the Brothers Johnson,
Right.
if I'm not mistaken.
Johnson,
that sample was phenomenal.
Yeah. Nah, I mean, that was something that we just snuck on the album, but that was done after the album was basically done. And another record that didn't make my album was the Chronic 2001 joint that Finesse gave Dre, which is The Message. And I was trying to shoot for that for Jewels, but, you know, Finesse he had something in his mind like, yo, this record gotta go when it go. So I'm not just giving it up, and I understood that, but those 2 records right there was something I was looking for to be on Jewel's album. The Message record, which was already done with Rel and the same singing on it, except for Mary, and, you know, the Jewel's joint by Finesse, you know, the title track, and, you know, it was crazy. So I had to opt for the title track instead of The Message.
And also, I know we're jumping ahead of the timeline here quite a bit, but in the year 2009, yourself and fellow Diggin in the Crates member AG actually teamed up to release the project titled Oasis, that actually featured production from the other members of D.I.T.C. I was wondering, can you tell our listeners a bit more about that particular project? And of course, is it actually still available to be streamed or purchased today? Because that album was absolutely phenomenal in my personal opinion.
We was just basically at a crossroads. You know, I don't think everybody wanted to make music together at that moment, so everybody was doing their own thing. And, you know, it was always in the air about doing a new Diggin album, but all the members weren't on board. you know, it made sense for me and A to do it because we the ones that stay on the road for the most part, and we do the most work when it comes to doing features and doing independent projects. And, you know, A works fast, I work fast, and it just made sense, you know what I'm saying? And we did the project, and I believe Lil Fame came up with the name for me to call me Oasis, and I just said, yo, that has your initial in it, we might as well call the album Oasis.
And I gotta say, right there is definitely a phenomenal name, man. And I gotta say, such a phenomenal project. I really wish, like, CDs were still a thing, and it was easier to actually get the CDs. And nowadays, you really got to go out and find them at secondhand stores or Discogs and order them online from other collectors.
Right, right. And I believe with that particular CD, it took people a couple of years to kind of catch up to that too, you know. But like I said, man, you can't expect people to just take in what you do right off the top. Some projects come to you, some projects you might not have a taste for it at the moment. You might be feeling something else, and you know, I understand that anyway, you know, so I don't get mad anymore.
And also as well, man, I have to ask for you because I do know that this evening we only touch base on like a little bit of your amazing career here this evening. I do know if I would have touched base on everything, we would have been here for hours. But I have to
No
ask,
doubt.
OC, what is next for you, man? Is there anything we happen to miss during tonight's broadcast? Anything else you do still want to talk about or promote? Well, we still got you here live on 97.7 FM this evening.
I mean, I'm still working. I moved out of New York a few years ago, so I'm down south now, and you know, it took a little readjustment, and you know, I just set up a new studio in my crib, so I'm about to do this next album. I try not to say it too much because people say they do albums and it take them 10 years to do an album, so I just tell people, you know, when the time is right, what I'm doing, you know, I'd rather show than do it, you know, than say it, you know what I'm saying? And I'm just working on this next project, man. Like, I just turned 51 on Friday the 13th, so I'm feeling good. I'm feeling relaxed. This pandemic took a lot out of all of us, so I just want to get back to work when it comes to making music, man. I got so much stuff to talk about, you know?
And I gotta say, first and foremost, I know I'm a few days late, but definitely happy belated birthday, man.
Appreciate it.
And I gotta say as well, I'm definitely looking forward to this up and coming record, and I don't mind waiting a couple years either, man. Because at the end of the day, I'd rather wait a couple years and get that real substance than, of course, a project that's rushed, man. So definitely take your time. Us real fans are definitely here waiting for it to drop.
Indeed, that feels good to hear somebody say that. But I definitely work better. I've always worked better, you know, doing my solo stuff and more quicker, more efficient, and you know, doing it with a group. So I'm not gonna take too long with this one. It's some things that I need to talk about, and you know, it's some things to be said and some things to have fun with musically. And plus, this is probably my last album as well. You know what I'm saying? My last solo album.
And I gotta say, since it is gonna be your last solo album, man, just thank you so much for years of monumental music, man. I gotta say this before we part ways. I grew up listening to your music. I used to always buy your albums when they first hit the shop. So thank you not only for your time this evening, but just giving us music that we all had the opportunity to enjoy for so many years.
Indeed, I appreciate it, man. And you know, people always it's so much. It's so many rappers these days. You know, sometimes people say, yo, when you putting out music, and I tell them, well, I've been putting out music for the past 2 years. Like, I had Opium, I had Same Moon, Same Sun, I had Perestroika, I had New Dawn, you know, I had Trophies. Like, this has been in a 3-year span, so 3 to 5 year span. So I put out like 5, 6 projects and Diggin stuff we put out. So, you know, it's weird when people ask me about projects, and it's like, yo, if you're looking for me to do a project every 30 days, it's not gonna happen. That's not how I make music.
And I agree with that, man. And it sounds bad, but a lot of these newer artists and whatnot, they make a song and release it. They don't really save it for an album. They just drop non-stop continuous singles. So I just think a lot of these artists are giving their fans way too much, and they expect it from everybody now because they think everybody else is now doing that.
Right. Well, I believe for the elder statesmen like myself, we shouldn't be doing that, depending on what you're trying to bring across. But I'm not mad at the guys, the younger cats that's doing that. If that works for them, that's cool. But for me personally, like if you're looking for a song every week, that's and I have stuff in the stash. But even with that, I'm still not just gonna throw it out. Like some of this stuff might die with me. You know what I'm saying? So that's how much stuff I'm sitting on. But at the same time, I don't believe in just giving away music just to satisfy the stat quo. That's not how I look at that.
And also, OC, this is the time in the interview quickly that I give a chance for the individual that does slide into the radio station airwaves, just a chance to drop them social media handles. That way our listeners can follow you all across the board. We are a hip-hop radio station, so I really hope they're already following you. But just in case, if you can, drop your social media handles. That way our listeners can follow you all across the board.
I only got two handles, so at OCDITC is my Instagram, and the real old Sizzle, TheRealOCIZZLE is my Twitter. And that's it, man. And I always tell these people these days too, man, stop being lazy. We got computers and stuff now. All you gotta do is Google it.
I gotta say, I definitely agree with that, man. But I think, unfortunately, it's gonna get worse before it gets better with the laziness, unfortunately.
Indeed. But it's like, damn, you can't Google somebody. Like, I had to go to the library when I was young. You know what I'm saying?
I definitely hear you on that, man. I remember those
Drop
days.
of a dime now. Yeah, so.
But I gotta say, first and foremost, OC, thank you so much, man, again, for just giving us a bit of your time here this evening and just coming on my radio station, man. It definitely was an honor and most definitely a privilege, man. And I'm definitely looking forward to this new album when it does drop to the general public, man. But for now, definitely have yourself a wonderful night, and hopefully down the line we can make this happen again sometime soon.
Indeed, man, and I actually miss Canada. Canada is one of the illest spots I ever performed a couple of times. Like, ram packed, you know what I'm saying? Like, I miss Canada like crazy. Like, the energy was phenomenal over there.
Yeah, we definitely put on some crazy shows, man. When we get hip hop down here, we definitely soak it all up as much as we can. We don't get a lot of great MCs like yourself down here very much. I think it's like once every 3 years almost. Well, when we do get it,
right,
we definitely take advantage of the opportunities.
Yeah, no, the few times I rocked out there, Hyro by myself, and I believe with Diggin and Lost Professor, like. But my shows was like ram packed. I couldn't believe it. The energy was just amazing. So I definitely look forward to come back out there and rocking out.
I gotta say, I definitely look forward to it as well. We got a lot of festivals down here, like Blues Fest and whatnot, man. So hopefully
Right.
I'll be able to be front and center and see you at a Blues Fest one year, man. Because I think we get about like 50,000 people there. It's ridiculous, the crowd amount.
Yeah, man. I ain't been on a festival run in probably like 3 years, 4 years. So it's about that time.
I think what I can do is I'll actually put a request in, because normally you can actually request some of your favorite artists, and I'll throw OC's name out there. I'll be like, yo, man, let's make it happen.
That's what's up. That's what's up.
But I appreciate you again, OC. Thank you so much for a bit of your time, man. And again, happy belated birthday. Good luck on this new project, and I'm definitely looking forward to hearing it when it drops, man. Thank you so much again.
Yeah. All right, bro.